My name is Sheila Lucas George. I'm from Miami, Florida. I was raised here in Miami, Florida. I'm here because my son was assaulted in school, on school grounds. It started off with him being bullied in elementary school. He was being bullied on a daily basis. Many times a week I was at the school. Both of my children went to two different schools. And many times a week with my older son, I was at the school because he was being bullied. I got a letter from one of the teachers who worked at the school saying that prior to my son being there at that school, these same children who were bullying my son were allowed to bully people when nothing was being done. I still have that letter from the teacher. I wrote a 15-page letter to the district of the school that my son was in, naming all the children who were bullying my son. I requested a meeting with the children, with the parents. That never occurred. When my son transferred from elementary to middle school, the children transferred over with him. Prior to my son's transfer at elementary school, my son came home with 2 bruises on his upper arm. I took pictures with my camera, called the police. The police came to my house. I had to sign a form for the police to be able to get the pictures from me. Eventually, I got the pictures back. Nothing was done about that. This was a teacher who bruised my son's arm, not a child. I reported that. Nothing was done. Then when my son transferred over to middle school, the same children that were bullying him transferred over with him, so the bullying never stopped. Then they tried to make it look like my son was doing this, that, and the other. I got a case manager because when I was staying in the cottages, which is a homeless shelter for women and children, a young lady told me how to go about getting a case manager. Well, I didn't finally end up getting a case manager. The case manager was supposed to assist me with things that I was unable to do, that I wasn't aware of. That never occurred. When my son got assaulted in school, on school grounds, he came home and told me about it that night. That next day, I called his case manager who worked at the hospital. She met me at the school. We sat and waited for the principal to get there. When the principal got there, they called us in the office. They had my son write a statement. On the top of the statement, the principal wrote the children's names, not being aware that 2 months or so prior, I had a 15-page letter that I still have with all the children's names on it. The 2 children's names that this principal wrote on the top of the paper were in this 15-page letter. When they did my son's statement, my son's case manager said that they would look into it and take care of it. 2 weeks later, because this was during summer school time, 2 weeks later, regular school started. I inquired about what was being done, got the runarounds, and when school started back, my son was being bullied still. Nothing was done, so I kept pushing and pushing what they were going to do. They transferred my son from out of that school into R.H. Morton, I believe it was. And so in other words, everything's being swept under the rug. But anyway, other things started occurring because my son became angry. When all this started happening to my son, he was 12 years old. This occurred from the time he was 12 up until he was 16. And then by the time he was 16, he had become so angry that he was fighting, not listening to anybody, listening to the wrong people, doing stuff that he had no business doing. But now he's a child, doesn't really know how to handle things. And with me being an adult, I didn't know how to handle the situation that was going on with my son and everything that they was allowing to occur to him at school, on school grounds. So it got to the point where he started coming home and telling me every time I went up to the school, it would make it worse for him. And at that time, I really didn't understand what he was telling me. And every time I went up to the school to discuss what was going on with my son would tell me I was making things worse and still call myself trying to fix things. I'm a mother. I'm supposed to protect him. So that's what I was trying to do. Wasn't yelling at nobody. Wasn't trying to kill nobody. Wasn't trying to hurt nobody. Nothing ever got done. So anyway, to make a long story short, everything got swept under the rug. But in the meantime and in between time, my son was still being bullied by certain people in the school system. And every time something happened, I had to go over people's heads. And so I ended up going to the senator's office. The same week I went to the senator's office, the school district that I wrote the 15-page letter to called me and gave me a case number, but still nothing happened. So they gave me the name of the detective who was supposed to have been investigating the case. And I'm not going to mention no names, just like I didn't before. But anyway, the detective said he investigated the case, but he never spoke with me or my son. He spoke with other people. So I'm trying to figure out, how can you investigate a case if you don't speak to the people that you need to speak with? So that got swept under the rug. I went to the newspaper, I think in mid 03, towards the end of 02, the Brick newspaper, at the time that they were in action. And they did an article just by looking at all my paperwork. They said that I was getting a circle jerk. In other words, everybody was giving me the runarounds. Everybody was shirking their duties, not doing what they were supposed to do. So still nothing ever got done. But 6 months after I went to the newspaper, I ended up in court being accused of neglect. So now instead of it being about my son, now it's about me. So because now, since my son would not speak up about his abuse, now it's their word against mine. Not only that, because I didn't have $10,000 to pay a lawyer for a class action lawsuit, nothing was done. So now I spent 3 years in court being accused of who I am as a person, being accused of who I am as a mother, being accused, period. And I'm trying to figure out what's going on, not really understanding anything. I went to the FBI agency. I forget what year because I don't have my paperwork with me. That's when I found out that the first lawyer I had plea bargained me without me knowing. Plea bargaining was never mentioned to me in the courtroom because we were supposed to have a court trial that never occurred. So because of that, because of the fact that my lawyer plea bargained me, I ended up having to spend 3 years in court, going back and forth to court when they told me to come, how they told me to come, when they told me to come. And in the process of all of that, I became suicidal. When I met my co-pastor and 2 other ladies who I didn't know, I knew them all of 3 to 5 minutes, didn't even know she was a co-pastor. I blurted out to them that I was trying to let my sugar drop because I no longer wanted to live, not understanding why or what it was that I was dealing with. They prayed for me, taught me how to read my word, and that's what has me here today, because I'm standing on my word. So, but from that point on, I've learned how to deal with the pain. I've learned how to deal with the hurt. But in the process, it messed up my relationship with my son, as well as my whole family. The young man that they had at the DCF, who was supposed to be, at the time, Children's Protective Services. I didn't know Children's Protective Services and DCF were the same thing. I ended up in court because I went to the wrong people for assistance. I was told, oh yes, we can assist you. And next thing I know, I was being charged with neglect. And it went from there.